Welcome back. We're certainly honored that you are a guest here at FreightWaves Live. We take a lot of pride in creating a platform to bring in the top thought leaders and companies doing disruptive stuff. Now, as part of our FreightWaves Live experience, we also like to show the disruptions that we're working on, the technologies that we here at FreightWaves spend a lot of energy, capital, and investment thinking about the future of freight and logistics. Our Sonar platform is the data analytics system for the freight market. Providing near real-time data, we're able to bring in a lot of actionable information for decision makers across the global logistics and supply chain industry. Now, what I'm about to show you has come to us through the mind of one of the industry's greats. It's a gentleman that recently joined FreightWaves to help us design our entire product strategy. He came from the industry. He has been involved in the technology cycles and disruptions that have built really the future of our industry for the last couple of decades. I want to invite Travis Rhyan. Travis is the FreightWaves Chief Product Officer. Travis, before you came to FreightWaves, you were one of the original CTOs of Global Trans. You were part of the management team that really helped scale that business up. You also were the CEO of 10-4, one of the first visibility companies that Trimble purchased.
That's correct.
So you joined FreightWaves, a company that has recently emerged as a top leader in terms of growth and disruption. Why did you choose to come here?
I think first I wasn't looking to come to FreightWaves, and so when I picked up the phone to call you and catch up after a few years, since I think almost when FreightWaves was starting, just to kind of assess your perspective of space and what was going on, to hear and seeing what you've done and had done at the time with the media brand and with the technology was kind of fascinating. There hadn't been a play of someone to have such a powerful voice in the media space. It was a bit antiquated, not that exciting. The COVID situation gave you guys this rocket booster to propel into virtual events, and we're putting on some things that I thought were incredibly cool. And so for me, having a background in product, but also being able to come in and touch the media side of the fence, it was pretty exciting. And I think it was a week or two after I called you that I was on board as part of the team. So
after the 10-4 transaction, sold to Trimble, you left Trimble, took a sabbatical,
Yep.
left the industry, sort of disappeared from the grid, literally. In Hawaii,
Yep.
Created a farm, and you decided to come back and make your re-entry into the industry here at FreightWaves, and you're about to show the product that you've been working on that you have called and nicknamed Apollo.
Correct.
That we have now called Supply Chain Intelligence. So let's talk about what Project Apollo was.
Sure. When I first got access to some of the data that you guys had strategically acquired or partnered to be able to present to users, I was blown away. Because for most of my time, it was all about building user interfaces, building the front ends. The data was always a derivative of what other people put into it. And so looking under the hood and seeing what was under the hood was like, whoa, we've got something exciting here. And then talking to you about your goal of being able to build something for the shipper community, the folks that are actually manufacturing products, with the goal of being able to benchmark, analyze, monitor, and forecast. It was like an artist having all their different types of paint and varying types of canvases to be able to create something beautiful, and to have the teams that you guys had put together with your data science group, which I had not been lucky enough to work with the data science group before, as well as the world-class engineers that were here on the team. It was like, whoa, let's go.
So you've spent a lot of time calling on the shipper community, being involved in helping create more visible and transparent supply chains. So you've applied that experience and knowledge of how their business works right into this project that we call Supply Chain Intelligence. So this is really Sonar's first product built specifically for shippers, for folks that are involved in supply chain decisions to help empower their business. Let's talk about what makes it great.
Sure. So this is the first release. It's the initial component that we're going to be having coming out in a series of apps. Initial tool, yes, designed for shippers. Long term, this is being built for brokers, carriers, folks that manage and facilitate transactions in the industry. Really an agnostic information system. And what I noticed is that as tools have emerged, they started with TMSs, ELDs, we get into visibility, ERP, some of these more complex tools, even RFP execution tools, there's still some black holes that were out there in data. And so leveraging what we had from a data set perspective and being able to bring it to the application, we found ourselves with some ways to do some data differently. So one of the things that we wanted to look at was pricing. Another thing we wanted to look at was scoring. And then really being able to give someone intelligence inside of a specific lane. So what we did was we looked at some data that we had, about $80 billion in transportation transactions that are fed and updated real time every day to give us our first contracted rate database to be able to access into.
So Travis, this is $80 billion of freight transactions taking from invoices of actual loads, $80 billion over the course of a couple of years. So there's a lot of history with the data. It's the richest set of data that's ever been available in an analytics platform that's also updated every single day in terms of refresh transactions. So it's given us the ability to combine the near-time data from tenders of seeing what happens in terms of requests with the payment data with what shippers are paying carriers and be able to see those transactions flow, and then all of the deep analytics behind it as well.
That's exactly right.
That's what makes this magical. So let's talk a little bit about the features that are built into it and how the data can really empower supply chains.
Sure. So one of the first things that is absolutely different than anything I've seen in the space, and I'm pretty sure FreightWaves is now the first to be able to provide this, as a byproduct of our customers integrating with us and bringing the data in the system, they're able to benchmark their rates against their peers and their cohorts. And so it's obviously much different for a large automotive manufacturer who's going to be looking at their annual spend, their RFP process, and measuring it against a large data set. It's helpful to look at what the whole market's doing, but it's much more helpful to know what the automotive industry is doing inside of a specific lane. Just like for retailers, they're not as concerned with how automotive contracts behave and how those RFPs and procurement processes happen. They want to know what's happening in the retail space and what's happening today.
So big box retailers are worried about how other big box retailers, what their freight costs are, and more specifically how a big box retailer that's sort of a general store, what its competitive cohorts are dealing with versus say a big hardware store that's also a big box retailer but a different type of big box retailer. So we've got that data here, but one thing that you did point out is if the supply chain organization submits its data into the platform, it's already participating in the entire ecosystem of the historical $80 billion of freight. So the system becomes smarter and smarter as it goes because it's already got this fantastic, really deep base of business. And so an auto manufacturer that comes onto the platform would already have the cohort data available to it. So it doesn't require companies to fill in those cohorts. Those cohorts are already built with all this historical data.
That's exactly right. And by contributing to the past 3.5 years of data that is already there, it makes the experience richer and richer every day. And we'll walk through kind of examples inside of the lane level because we're really talking today about lane level intelligence, whether that's facilitating an RFP, whether that's measuring how well did I do when I built my RFP, whether that's going out to say, you know what, this year has been crazy. What are the market trends? What did I do right? What did I do wrong? But then being able to know with confidence inside of a lane whether I've done a good job at executing in a difficult lane, in an easy lane to cover, and then again, more importantly, or as importantly, how my peers have done inside of that same space.
So let's talk about what's on the actual platform. I'm going to dive into each of these features.
Sure. So when we look at a lane, we'll look at this first lane, the Dallas, Texas to Denver, Colorado lane. What we'll first show, it's important, even though contract rates behave differently, the first thing we want to show is a spot market trend. And so our users are able to see behavior in the spot market over the last 12 months and how it's behaved, because that may lead them into decisions about potentially switching from contract carrier to spot. Most importantly is the benchmark rate. So our users provide this via an integration, via an CSV upload, an Excel file, right into our API or a direct TMS integration to be able to provide us their benchmark. And a lot of folks use that differently. Sometimes it's a contracted rate, sometimes it's a target rate, sometimes it's a rate that they've inherited. And so we take this benchmark rate, Craig, and we go out and we look against the market and how the market's performed and against the peer. And you can see in this first specific rate, they're paying 15 cents above market. which may be helpful to them. That might help them know, okay, as the market as a whole, I'm a little bit higher. But when they deep down into it a little bit more, they understand that they're only 4 cents above their peers. Now, this could be one of a few things. This could be a strategic decision. Someone may be smart inside of that company and say, we do this on purpose. We know what our peers are paying, at least we think we do. Now we know, because we want to have access to that capacity when it gets into a crunch.
So let's just use a specific example. Let's say we have an auto manufacturer that is paying above market. But auto manufacturers tend to pay above market.
That's right.
Because they have very intense service requirements, and they're non-forgiving if you have a supply chain issue.
Correct.
So they're very, very intense. So naturally, an auto manufacturer is going to pay way above market. Now, most of the rate data that's already in the market that pre-existed this platform is all about market averages. But a load of hay is a very different transaction than a load of auto parts in this example. So we can see that it's 15 cents above market. And then this is the peer pricing you're talking about, right? That's the industry cohort that you're talking. So that auto manufacturer, looking at its own business compared to its competitors, it's only 4 cents above on that line. Is that the way someone should interpret it?
That's exactly right. But let me show you something else as well. Beyond just looking at what my peers have done or how the market's performed, we wanted to do something different. We wanted to do something new. And so we've brought in a new form of benchmarking. When we talked about earlier about being able to benchmark, analyze, monitor, and forecast, we wanted to create a new scoring system using our data scientists, and using behaviors that we've seen in the industry. So the first thing that you'll notice beyond just the pricing, we've got the spot market, we've got the benchmarks, we've got the peers, is a score. And this is a lane score, which is a painting, if you will, of how difficult this lane would be for someone to get covered at a transactional level or inside an RFP. And so what we've done is we've expanded that by providing a score. You can see this lane, Dallas to Denver, Colorado. Everybody knows it's not the easiest lane in the world. Carriers aren't in love to going to Denver over the course of a year. If you notice our time frame that we have selected here, we're looking at 11 months of data.
So the 47 compared to the 13, I see a 13 there on a score. What is the difference between that lane and the other lane?
Great question. We dive into that a little bit inside of our Sonar supply chain index scoring here. So we look at 3 elements as well as the signals. So the origin volatility index is a huge component of that. And that's a set of proprietary data sets as well as what we have, which shows seasonality. It shows the volume of the overall market. It shows tender rejections specifically out of that market as a whole, as well as a couple other derived data sets that we've used to create a single volatility out of the origin itself.
So I'm familiar with financial markets and the volatility indexes that shows just when markets sort of heat up, there's a lot of volatility. Yes. It's very sort of the same thinking or methodology right there.
That's exactly right. And the user is able to slice and dice the data. Again, we're looking at January 1st until almost just a few days ago. And so over that time, now if a user wanted to zoom in and look at the last 30 days, you're going to see those numbers update. Same thing now, you look at the inbound volatility market, it's a massive difference here, right? That one shows to be a very volatile market over the course of the year. It also shows it to be a very shipper-focused market, not necessarily as carrier-focused.
So if I'm interpreting these numbers, a 15 is a low volatility. That's why it's green.
That's correct.
A 71 is a very high volatility.
That's exactly right.
So outbound, it's a very, very easy market to deal with. Yep. Inbound, it's very, very difficult.
That's exactly right. Got it. And then the last piece of it, well, not the last piece, one of the final pieces of it is the tender rejections inside of that lane. So we do want to look at the lane as a whole. We look at the origin, we look at the destination with some of the things people are familiar with in the Sonar application with our signals. And then we apply some historical averages and looking at the size of the markets. One of the things is this a tiny market? Is this a small market in Idaho?
So market share and volume really matters.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so those come up to help us drive the overall score. And you can see on this sheet alone, you've got something as low as a 13, and then Stockton, California to Chicago, which if you want to click on this lane right here, the Stockton, Chicago, it's a lot different behavior. You're always going to want to, a carrier's always going to want to take a load to Chicago. You can see its destination volatility is or inbound as we call it, is much lower.
So, Travis, when I'm thinking about being, if I'm running a manufacturing plant or a retailer or grocery or whatever I'm doing, and I'm trying to understand what's happening in the market, I'm really interested in how that lane is going to perform. So one of the things that I hear a lot with folks in the shipping community is that they want to have a rate, they want to have people in the routing guide. The issue, though, is a good rate in January may not be a good rate in September. You may not be able to get a truck there. And what you're showing is the volatility of that lane and the seasonality that's being impacting that lane, right?
That's exactly right. And you can dive deep into that with our historical rate data, being able to look at it over time, being able to look at, here we're looking at over 3 years, actually 4 years.
And this is actually pulling from the database that we've got, all those invoices. This is contracted load data.
That's correct.
It's not spot, it's not broker submitted. This is shipper or supply chain community submitted data that's been not self-reported, but actual invoice.
That's right.
For the full invoice. So we got all of the data elements there related to the shipper supply chain community broken down by competitive cohort.
That's exactly right.
That is amazingly powerful. I'm very, very excited. And then what you've done is you built this whole dashboard with all these other data points right here.
That's right. And going back to your earlier point, if someone wants to look at a period of time, let's say they want to look at a 3-month bid or a 3-month of last year. Remember, we can go back in the past and look at this right now, or we can look it up to real time. This data is going to give them an ability to export it, download it, or pull it in through our API of what that period of time looks like, and then do another benchmark to compare it against another period of time. What we've seen across the industry in the last, maybe decade is that traditionally shippers used to procure their freight over the course of a year, right? There was a bid, it went out, everybody bid on it, they got all this freight awarded to them, and everything was great because the market was more stable. As the market has become more volatile over the last 5+ years, the move to mini bids and mini RFBs has become almost a norm. Not everybody's done it. That's one of the reasons we wanted to build this tool, was to make this much easier for large shipping organizations and manufacturers to do mini bids and to be able to look at a smaller piece in time where life gets tough, to be able to use this tool to make it a lot easier on themselves.
It also makes from a shipper standpoint, it makes it much easier to understand what lanes you need to focus on in terms of managing your risk.
Yes.
And what lanes that you can lock in a rate, set it and forget it. I think it's pretty powerful. And it should make those carrier negotiations much easier, because you can have a conversation understanding how capacity is impacting that lane, or has based on our tender data.
Right. There's always been an anecdotal, I think I know this is a good lane, this is a bad lane. Now you can have detailed conversations with your carriers, understanding from their perspective certain times of year where it's going to be very difficult for them to get a reload, or certain times of the year where it might be really hard for them to pick up your load, and it gives you the ability to maybe offer more than your peers or the market is doing for a small period of time, to be able to make sure that your supply chain is uninterrupted.
Perfect example of this is taking a load out of the Pacific Northwest. 9 months out of the year, that's easy. You call, you haul. Yep. But come apple season, apple orchard season, when that heats up, or Christmas tree season, or Christmas wrapping paper, when that is going off in the Pacific Northwest, good luck finding a truck. Your 70 cent to LA went to $3, all because of the conditions of that market that are specific to that market. And really, you're trying to bring all of this data in here.
That's exactly right. And
what I think is so powerful about it, Travis, is that it's combining the near real-time data through tenders, that we have a perspective on the electronic tender market, which tends to be large and sophisticated supply chains that are able to electronically tender, the rejection data on how carriers perform. It's all about near real-time data, looking at how rates have been impacted. This is really a powerful AI platform for the industry.
It is. It is. And when you think about those seasonality things, I think apples are a great example to talk about. As you're getting ready to facilitate going into apple season in one of those lanes, you're going to see that behavior spiking. And if you've known in the past that you've had to shift your freight to either outsourcing it, moving to heavy brokerage, or by integrating with us, we can tell you that your carriers have dropped off and that your route guide really hasn't been that valuable. Now you've got the ability to take action and make your route guide valuable, make changes that impact you and ultimately your customer who you're delivering to.
I think this is perhaps the best thing we've ever done in data science since the born on of the OTRI. Just bringing in all of this information, making it actionable, giving the ability for the shipper or the supply chain professional to upload their network information and get comparison analytics, benchmarking analytics, able to monitor what's happening on those lanes and how it's performing, and being able to forecast it it's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, this is exciting. As you mentioned earlier, I've had some time off, a lot of time to get rested. And this has been probably the most fun project, to be able to work with the data science team and the development team here to combine the rich, incredible data that we have, the data from our customers, the existing Sonar tools that we've been able to leverage has been phenomenal. And then now taking this product, is this just the beginning, Craig, right? Today is just the beginning of this product's evolution. And as we talk more about the supply chain intelligence tools and the platform, I can't wait to have more of these in the future.
I'm so excited about industry-specific cohorts. I think that is so remarkable, especially combined with the real-time market data. It's pretty remarkable. I do have a question.
Sure.
As a shipper, it looks like the Fresno to Washington, D.C. lane is your biggest risk. How would you interpret what we see right there?
You're exactly right. So let's go to that lane. When I look at this lane, what I can see is it's a low score. Now, a lot of the things that you're not seeing on the screen may become at play here. Size of the market, seasonality. And so when you look at Fresno, we know that there's a lot of produce that comes out of Fresno, right?
It's very seasonal. It has a lot of season activities. It's a reefer market during the summer, but during the winter, it's a dead market.
That's exactly right. So that seasonality is important because a lane has a high score. Some of the highest scoring to the lanes are when there is a flat curve. It's the least amount of risk or vibration inside of a lane. This lane, we don't display it. Now you can see the pricing inside of this lane is all over the place over the course of the year.
And that's because of the I mean, you think about, and it was interesting when we took our ELD data that we were looking at detention times in dwell. Fresno was the worst dwelled market. It's because of all the USDA inspections, loading produce, loading all the food in these big warehouses. They're a pain. And so that's where we saw it. Certainly it makes sense that Fresno is a really tough market.
That's right.
So if you're a carrier though, you could actually use the same data to understand that really Fresno is a really volatile lane. And
right.
So you may not want to take trucks into Fresno because it's going to be a really inconsistent lane in terms of running a network.
That's exactly right. And you can compare Fresno to DC. DC may have a stable inbound score, but it's stable because there's never any freight there, right?
It goes in.
And I don't think there's a lot of manufacturers in Washington,
well,
DC.
DC has got a bad reputation, especially lately. So yeah. we're going to stay away from putting anything into DC. Nobody wants to go to DC
That's
right now.
right. Maybe that's why the score is as low as it is.
So that lane specifically is a tough lane, whereas you have a high quality, what I would call a high quality lane. You can't see because of the screen here. That Stockton to Chicago has a 93. Obviously, Chicago's a beautiful market to move into. And pricing doesn't really get volatile.
Click back on that one again. That's right.
I mean, you don't see a lot of activity. You see that something happened this year, simply that was a COVID effect, and that's been the surge of the market. But I mean, look, it looks almost, if you take 2020 out of it,
absolutely,
it's almost like a heart rhythmic monitor. It just moves into sort of narrow bands. So, but that's the nature of the beast that we are in 2020.
That's right. That's
so,
right.
Travis, this is really exciting. Lots of new features going to be added to the platform. A lot of great ideas coming out of it. It's all about making the data that we built inside of Sonar actionable for the community.
That's right. And we're looking forward to showing more action. The next steps that we'll be having in here when we talked about benchmark, monitor, analyze, and forecast are going to be actionable items. I'd love to give a little sneak peek to what we're doing next in this platform, but we'll wait till our next meeting to show that off.
You can't tease it. I won't let you do that just yet, but I'm really, really excited about where this takes it. Now, we're looking for a couple of pilot customers, invite-only pilot.
That's correct.
As we introduce the platform, we want to work with companies to really hone in on the visual layers to ensure that we're dealing with the sensitivity around all of this intense decision-making in AI and make sure all those things are mapped up. The great thing is we have all of this historical rate data. It's the richest set of data I've ever seen by industry, which makes it really cool, and all sorts of other data that I won't be able to talk to today, but I think getting into these peer cohorts makes it incredibly powerful.
Yep, I agree. Like you said, we are looking for a few more customers. Our initial invite, our initial beta period is full, but we have a sign up on our website to be able to get in line or to request to do an invite, and we'll reach out to you. I'll let you know where you fall inside of that mix. But yeah, we're really excited to slowly roll this out across some of the largest companies and most important brands in the country, as well as serving our existing customer base that we have in Sonar today. It's interesting, since COVID has taken place, we've seen a lot of demand among the supply chain community for that near real-time data. This takes it to a whole new level. Yes, it does. Well, Travis, thank you so much for here. We're very excited about the future of Sonar, where it's taken. We're also very excited about the rest of the FreightWaves Live event. Don't forget that all of this content is available on demand after the show ends. So if you liked a particular video and want to share it with friends, want to share it with colleagues,
supervisors, executives, whomever, customers, be sure to go through after the conference is over, and there'll be an article as well as you can get them on the tv.freightwaves.com website. Stay tuned. We have a special announcement. JP Hampstead and I are going to talk about something pretty incredible here in a few seconds. Just a few short commercial breaks, and we'll be right back.